Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ark. What is religion? Perhaps this seems like an obscure question, yet it is of vital importance for understanding a much more pertinent question which I have been struggling with for quite some time. Can one fight the paradigm they live in, or must one simply adapt? It seems to me that there are two ways of viewing religion, and that this question of paradigms rests upon which one is correct. The first view of religion which we will investigate is the Jungian view. Largely due to the work of Carl Jung and thinkers who followed in his line of thought, the question, what is religion, seems to have recently become a different question entirely. What is consciousness? Jung saw religion as the expression of the very structure of consciousness itself. Thus, the records of the development of human consciousness, the way people have perceived and interacted with the world, can be found in the history of religion. There are two unavoidable first principles to human experience: the material world and the world of consciousness. Jung would argue that the material world is nested within the world of consciousness. We perceive the material world through consciousness. Thus, the material world is shaped by the structure of our consciousness. We only see what is useful to us, what is dangerous to us. We do not see all the spectrums of light or hear all the sound waves. We do not even see most of our environment, only the snakes in the bushes and the ripe fruit in the trees. In fact, most of our environment is actually other people. Thus, we have adapted largely to other consciousnesses. Religion determines the structure of an individual consciousness and of the collective consciousness of a people. It determines their values, the way they interact with other people, and even the way in which they perceive the material world. Thus, a record of religion should provide us with a record of the changes in the structure of human consciousness across time. Jung believed that the development of consciousness is teleological, that it is moving towards an end, and that its very structure determines that end. Teleological causation is the Aristotelian idea that the very structure of something is a type of causation. If someone makes an axe, for example, they are playing a role in causing that axe to be used for chopping. Similarly, the way in which an animal is created causes it to behave in a certain way. A wolf eats sheep because it is a wolf, because that is the structure of its being. Jung believed that all individuals go through a set of developmental transformations from childhood to old age, which Jung called individuation. For example, all children must become independent from their mothers if they are going to develop properly into an adult. Jung believed that these rules also applied to the collective development of human consciousness, that consciousness has to pass through certain stages of development, and that it is developing towards an end. His student, Erich Neumann, even went as far as to map the development of individual consciousness throughout one's life onto the development of collective consciousness since the dawn of time. We can easily see trends in consciousness throughout history, such as consciousness becoming increasingly internalized, or even something as fundamental and ancient as the development of a place in the brain for language. But the claim that all of human consciousness has a predetermined development may seem far-fetched. However, though we do not realize it, teleological thinking comes somewhat naturally to us. Take evolution, for example. We assume that a primate is not going to start evolving into a crustacean, but rather, once it is started down the path of primate evolution, that it will continue to evolve into something ever more human-like. The theory of evolution is not explicitly teleological, and yet we continue to study chimps for signs of tool use, and some scientists even claim that chimps have entered the Stone Age. We assume that chimps will become more like us, that they're evolving towards an end, and we would be shocked if chimps suddenly began evolving, quote-unquote, backwards. So we see that a teleological view of consciousness is not that far-fetched. This way of thinking about religion is what gave rise to Jung's astrological theories and his book, Ion. But there is another way of looking at religion, a more Nietzschean way. In this view, consciousness is not the first principle, but rather the body and the instincts from which consciousness arose. Thus, religion can be thought of as different competing systems for expressing the instincts. This is how Nietzsche's idea of slave morality and master morality arose. The idea that your religion and your morality are tools for your survival and success. The morality and religion of a master class, a ruling class, will be designed to keep them in power, to keep the values and social structure which benefits them dominant. The religion of a slave class would naturally be formed in opposition to the ruling class and against their environment, which is unfavorable to them. It would focus on salvation and freedom in the next world, rather than this world, in which they have no power. In this conception, there is no guided destiny to collective development, only different systems of religion competing for dominance. Your only destiny is the character of your people, which results from your religion and your morality. As Jordan Peterson points out, the map of meaning and values which you use to view and interact with the world is extremely important, and you will fight and die to preserve it. This is why new atheist thinkers such as Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins say that religion is irrational and the cause of violence. However, even if you take the most reductionistic standpoint, that the goal of life is to propagate your genes, then religious wars still seem rational. From the perspective of genes, you are almost identical with your family and extremely similar to your tribe. Therefore, propagating your socio-religious environment in which your tribe will have a higher chance of surviving and thriving is more advantageous than propagating your individual genes. You naturally want to preserve an environment which is favorable to you. This is what a ruling class endeavors to do by maintaining power. If your environment is hostile to you, as is the case with a slave class, your morality and religion will be opposed to your environment, and you will endeavor to overthrow the current socio-religious map of meaning and shape the environment to your favor. This is what the Christians did to the Romans. Jordan Peterson talks about how ideas are almost like genetic mutations which can travel across generations, in that they change the way you think and act. Once a person comes up with a novel idea, it can be spread extremely rapidly, and other people can adopt it just by being exposed to it. Jesus came up with a novel idea, and consequently, the Christians completely inverted Roman morality, claiming that the Roman gods were demons, the instincts were evil, worldly empires and wealth were futile, and meekness and weakness were virtuous instead of strength and dominance. The Christians also altered Judaism, which was closed off to non-Jews, so that it became extremely transmissible and thus allowed it to spread through the whole Roman Empire. And now we come to see why these two ways of looking at religion are so important to our current predicament. If we take up the Jungian view of religion, then there is nothing that we can do to fight our current paradigm. Just as it was futile for the Romans to resist Christianity once it had built up momentum and was spreading across the empire, so it is futile to fight against the digital age. Perhaps for the next few hundred years, the father, the ruler of the Christian age, and the digital mother will struggle for power, but eventually the father will be slain just as the Roman gods were cast out of heaven and into hell, and the digital mother will secure her place as the ruler of the new age. Just as the instincts, the passions, and the worldly became evil in the last age, and the virtues of the young hero were given up for the virtues of the father, now the logos, the spirit, the masculine, civilization as it was in the classical and Christian ages, will become evil, and traditional masculine virtues will be given up for the virtues of the digital mother, comfort, equality, and an even more feverish world escapism than was present in the Christian age. Just as in the transition from the rule of the Roman gods to the rule of Christianity, statues of the gods were replaced by statues of winged angels and statues of Hercules with statues of David, we must now adapt the expression of our instincts for the digital age. Just as the Christian age grew naturally out of the Roman age, so this age has grown naturally out of the Christian age, and we must pass through it. However, if we take the more Nietzschean approach, then we can fight the ethos of the digital age, and perhaps even prevail. As Jesus showed, standing in opposition to the current paradigm is powerful. With the right ideology, a small religious sect can completely take over an empire and overthrow the ruling paradigm. Perhaps a small cult around health and being embodied, around excellence and striving, could rapidly spread throughout the West and completely overthrow the paradigm of the digital mother. If this is the case, we should work with all our strength to oppose the digital age, to stand in complete and unwavering opposition to the collective. We should work to develop a morality and ideology focused wholly on the body, on the instincts, on health and strength, and to resist the move towards the digital. We should form small communities which strictly refuse to take part in the current paradigm. We should form a religion which holds the body sacred and refuses to alter it with technology. We should make ourselves prosecuted, make ourselves complete outcasts of society like the Christians did, and by these means hope to fight the digital mother. Both of these options seem rather grim, but I think that there is a third way. Jung is right. There are certain inevitable developments in consciousness based on our environment and our collective morality, and indeed, most people's ideologies and morals remain unconscious, directed by the collective or by those in power. However, it is also the case that religions are always adapting and responding to current issues, that Christian morality was largely a response to Roman power, that people are always struggling for their maps of meaning to become or remain dominant, and that these struggles are unpredictable. Thus we see that our best hope is to attempt to direct and take ownership of this age, just as the Romans did with Christianity, and so managed to maintain significant power and cultural influence into the Christian age. As I discussed in my last video, the integration of technology and biology is inevitable, but we can decide whether technology makes us stronger or weaker. Thus we see it is of absolute importance that we choose a system of morals and beliefs which both harmonize with the digital age and allow the correct expression of the instincts so that we do not become a species of podmen. The rising ruling class has a very clear vision of the future, a future in which you live in a pod, have no property, and rent everything from large companies, a future in which everyone is registered with the government via a digital identity, a future in which people are drugged by entertainment and kept docile with a flow of controlled information while they are extorted as both laborers and consumers, a future in which the health and the freedom of the individual is sacrificed for the safety of the collective, or rather, for the profit of the few who rule over the collective and keep them begging for safety by generating fear, hysteria, and crisis. Currently, we have no unified vision to answer this. Simply resisting is not enough. Those who resist will be left behind or forced to join. We must develop our own vision of the future, a vision in which human striving and excellence prevails against the desire for safety and comfort, a vision in which biology prevails over the digital, a vision in which technology is used to make us stronger and make us surpass our limits. We must come up with our own vision of the ideal future, not one of transhumanism and escapism into the machine, but one which is fully human, one filled with color and beauty, with civilizations and works of art which will be wondered at for thousands of years. This is within our grasp, if only we have the vision and pure energy and love of life to reach out and grasp it. Think of the potential of the internet to create great art, to create stories which you can interact with. Imagine a website which allows you to walk through Dante's Inferno, illustrated and narrated, and to interact with the characters. Think of the potential for the transmission of ideas on the internet, for one man to preach and for the whole world to hear, for alliances between communities all over the globe working towards one vision, a vision of thriving and beauty. The digital age could be a new renaissance, a new flood of life and enthusiasm. But for this, we need a vision, for that is the great beauty of the internet. It is a vessel for our dreams.